Industrial souls forged in fire's embrace. Their lives entwined with skill's relentless pace. In factory's depths, where engines
all right. Hey, people. Hope you're having a good Friday out there today. Today on Industrial Souls, you get to be the first ones to hear the new AI-generated theme song, which you just enjoyed for a millisecond. Anyways, you might have seen that on LinkedIn. You might not have. Today's guest is Chris Carolan, and I know you've seen him on LinkedIn. He is like one of the most prodigious live streamers that I think is on LinkedIn. I mean, he's on literally, I think today he's doing 4 shows or something crazy like that in a single day. So this dude is really trying to put some content out there. And he is a HubSpot guru and knows a lot about Rev-Ops, is very passionate about solving problems for Rev-Ops using the HubSpot platform, knows a lot about it, talks to tons of people about it. So we're going to find out what he thinks is important for us to know about that. And also, I really want to know the story behind the beard. We are beard brothers. You will see. If you've seen him, you know the beard is iconic. So anyways, hang on for more from Chris because things are about to get industrial. Chris Carolan.
Dude, hey, I'm taking notes over here. That's so good. That's so good.
How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing awesome.
What number of show is this for you today so far?
This is number two. Two. Yeah. So, hey, I just like getting to show up and talk about stuff. That's kind of how all that started in the first place. So,
yeah. No, I know. I know you got a lot to talk about. You got 2 more after this one, right? So you better have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Well, you know, it got easier once you start having other people involved in the conversation.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's been. I wish there was a cool story behind the beard, but really, there wasn't. I think the closest thing I could associate with was it was the year that James Harden joined the Rockets, and he, I think, had the nickname of the Beard. And beard was a big deal. So it definitely happened the same year. So maybe that was some subconscious permission. But like, I'm lazy and I didn't like shaving all the time. And then once it got long enough to the point where I started getting compliments on it, I was like, oh, okay. Permission. Let's do it.
It's epic, bro. You have like a seriously epic beard and it's getting long. I can't tell how long it is. Let's see how long it is.
I was actually.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah. And like usually I can't like let it go throughout the day, so it happens to get longer. So I make it straighter. But
nice streaks of salt and pepper in there. It's looking good.
Participated in a competition before like a beer conference. So they had all these breweries that were having all these beer competitions, and as many compliments as I get, like just there was no competing with the ginger beards out there. And I understood it. They're beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Well kept, and it's just like, see, I'm not going to take it that far. But yeah. And for me, like, even though I'm live every day, like if I haven't met you already, I can get a little shy. And this happens to be like one of the best icebreakers ever. It just does the job for me, right?
Gives people something to ask you about, like I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I get the same thing. Actually, I oddly The oddest question that I've ever had is, and I get it a lot, is what do you call that? What do you call that beard? And I just say, I call it Alfonso. That's his name, I guess. I don't know. Or some random name, João, some Portuguese name.
Yeah.
Cui, you can call him whatever. What do you mean? What do I call it? It's a freaking beard. And you ever get any weird questions about it?
Well, the toughest one is the how long did that take?
Yeah, I
Right?
get that a
Like
lot.
I it's not like there's cycles where it's just like, all right, got to here, shave it all off, right?
Start over.
So maybe 1 to 2 years to get to like a decent length. I don't know, but it's been growing for since 2013, 2014. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
I get that one a lot too. How long did it take to grow? Well, I've had it I've been growing my beard since I was 18. So, I don't know, 30 years, but
I've got
like
30 years of
really,
experience growing beards.
if
That's
you
how
cut
long.
it off, it would grow back in a year. Like it grows like a freaking weed. It's
Yeah.
hit maximum velocity. You know how beards are, like they have like an escape velocity and they reach it and they can't go any farther, right? That's where mine is. Like I don't have to cut it. It's like it's this long. It does not exceed that length no matter
Awesome.
what,
Okay.
But
Okay.
anyways,
Something to look
beards are
forward
fun.
to. They are.
Beards
They
are
are.
fun. Beard brothers unite.
Especially once like I started. It was around the time, and I don't think we'll talk about this the whole episode, but it's around the time like my hair
You
was
never know.
thinning. My hair was thinning, and I used to really enjoy my hair. And then once I had the beard, I was just looking there in the mirror instead of up here, right? And it just a whole philosophical change to life, right?
It's like a
How
180-degree shift of reality.
yeah, man, good times. I've been loving this. I've been loving this show, man. I think
Thanks.
it's. I know you've been in marketing a long time, and it's always been interesting to me, like trying to connect the dots between the industrial souls of the world, if you will, and just trying to scale that outside of the one-to-one conversations, the synchronous stuff, the being at events, right? It's like, why is this a challenge, right? Like, how can we just get through and say, hey, this is just another way to be you. This is how we scale you. So having these conversations, I think, out in the open like this is the only way to get it done at this point. So love what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that encouragement. Same to you. You're like the most live streamer. You're like practically like Big Brother, like 24-hour live stream. But yeah, same to you. And as you know, like these conversations, I mean, we met Industrial Marketing Live, but there's so many people who I've talked to who I've never physically met. And then it's like, I don't even remember. Did we ever, did I meet you? Okay. Or maybe not. It doesn't even matter anymore. It's just like, well, we've talked so many times, and you can, especially if you're, you can only reach so many people physically. And I live off the continent of America, so that makes it even farther. I can meet some Germans pretty easily, but like Americans, it's a little more complicated. And it's just nice to talk to people. And these convos that I have, at least, I mean, a big part of why I personally do the show is I just love having the convos. Like it's actually truly fun and enjoyable, like just talking to people, hearing their thing. Trying to get them to talk about something they're passionate about and see what lights them up. And that's just,
It creates
it's
the best
fun.
content. It creates the best content too.
It does. And you can bring other people into it so that other people can see it and they're enjoying it. Nobody's in the room with us here, but they're, they're going to be watching. They're watching now, they're watching later or whatever. And I know people see it. They'll see this of you, and they'll see, whatever other guests, and that's beneficial for everybody. But it also just helps everybody get to know everybody a little bit better because there's like things that just never come out. You just never see like the real person,
Yes.
on their LinkedIn. But
yeah.
So one thing I normally start out with is just ask people to give their kind of career stories. So I'm just going to ask you the same thing. Just tell the story of how you got to this spot now, being a Rev-Ops and HubSpot whisperer.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that wasn't the plan. Uh, uh, and just to kind of put it in perspective how far I've come. Uh, so in 2006, finished my degree in biology with a chemistry minor up at Saginaw Valley State University in Michigan. And up to that point, through high school and college, I had been in retail and worked at movie theaters. So like pretty much jobs that have like the maximum level of customer interaction,
Right.
dealing with human beings. And I did not enjoy it. And sometimes, but other times maybe. Uh, Moved down to Texas, find myself in oil and gas pretty quickly with any kind of scientific degree. Uh, Showed up for an interview after putting the resume on monster.com. Was the only one to show up of the three that were scheduled. So I
Wow.
got the job, uh, making twice as much as I ever had before at $12 an hour. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a bench chemist, which just, it was me. It was a spreadsheet to write on. It was a balance in front of me, and I was putting liquid sulfur in bottles of oil so that people could, test their gasoline, at refineries or to make sure it was following, standards and stuff. And I just remember rejoicing at the fact that I did not have to deal with customers. Like I did not have to deal with people. I could just come in. There was like 5 people working at the. It was like heaven in terms
Yeah,
of just somebody who likes to, is introverted and
I feel you.
had enough contact with the human population at that point. So that's how far I've come, right?
Yeah.
And but through that journey, moving up through, creating the product, doing R&D, uh, getting in charge of the lab at some point, being in charge of production and quality control. And I love to share this story, like the why behind this training and knowledge gap, focus that I have. Like when I was production and quality control manager, I'm the one, so it's customized commodity product that people have to buy. So there's no, the sales process is, can you do it? Right. And so I'm the guy that says, yep, these elements, these concentrations, we can do that. This is how much it's going to cost. Then I give somebody else do the quote uh, and close the order. But then if anything happens with the material, it's not working the way intended, I'm the troubleshooter too.
Mm-hmm.
And in those moments, of course, our bottle is $100. They're using like $200,000 instrumentation to run the bottle. Clearly, if it's not working out, it's the $100 bottle's fault, right? But then you become clear that they have no idea how to run the $200,000 instrument. And I got good at helping troubleshoot from that perspective. And what that taught me as we served the entire supply chain, vertically and horizontally, right? So upstream, downstream, midstream, all these different product types, third party, testing labs, they don't talk to each other. And there's one standardization body that everybody looks to, and that's, ASTM. It's got these standards, but there's a bunch of politics involved in how those are written. And like, it's just a broken system. While none of them are focused on training users, they're actually trying to divest in things like analytical scientists and stuff like that. And
Mm.
so everybody starts developing towards green light, red light, right? For the equipment, for any process. Like how can we put things in place? Now there's plenty of places where this works, and that's why automation and is a big thing. Um, but when you invest in the lower skilled labor because you think you have this green light, red light situation, whenever anything goes wrong, like you've got to bring somebody else in, whether that's one person in your giant company or all these contractors start popping up like, hey, we have the expertise, we can help you with that, right? And it's just been very interesting to me because, of course, as the manufacturing companies do that, and now the users no longer invest in that kind of expertise, it just creates this immense knowledge and skills gap
Right.
that is still being addressed today. Like, I don't think anybody's solved for it. You know, we constantly hear about less jobs over here. Meanwhile, like skilled technical laborers, there's just an unbelievable amount of jobs available. And, but since we live in this digital space now, training those people and the way they have come to learn how to learn, right? The inability to provide on demand training in different aspects, like training on the job. Like you can't wait for somebody to just follow you for 6 months and learn all of your bad habits when they do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just such an impact to not solve the problem. So, kind of long story short, maybe, because I knew all the products, I knew all the customers, moved over into marketing and sales, used some Salesforce, met HubSpot in 2017, implemented HubSpot 4 different times at companies between 2 million and 500 million, global and domestic, and just the same trend, like both inside of these companies and whatever space I was looking at, even to the point where now, because as I learned HubSpot, I was like, okay, this is making sense. You learn things like they ask you answer, story brand, like, oh, these make sense. And we got all these people saying that they're focused on helping industrial companies. And the message makes sense to me, but nobody's getting through. Like, what is the wall? Like, why are we not getting through? Over the last year, when I started working kind of in SaaS in the HubSpot ecosystem, it became immediately apparent. Like, we're not speaking the language, we're making way too many assumptions. Our manufacturing page on the website is just like maybe a couple words have been changed from the SaaS page on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I understand now why leaders hate phrases like customer experience, digital transformation, customer success. They've never heard of things like Rev-Ops, right? It doesn't change the fact that they need to do it. But when
Right.
you're inside and you have to, like, it's just a huge educational lift, right? Like when you combine that with change management and internal communication structures that aren't there, it's a challenge. And that's why I ended up on the outside, right? I was brought into organizations to build out marketing infrastructure that wasn't there. And I could get buy-in for, let's be the number one resource. We understand customer experience is important and we need to provide a better one or differentiate. We need to be online more. We want to be top of mind, right? But when there is no RevOps program, revenue operations, when nobody's really in charge of the CRM or the ERP, right?
Right.
Both times that the person in charge of the ERP is just IT and is break fix only. There's no
Right.
optimization happening. There's nobody looking to see if these systems are working for the users,
Right. No strategy, no
right?
strategic approach to it.
And like, so then when I come in and I get buy-in, I get the $1 million budget, I get the new team of people, and we try to start doing stuff. Nope, like no chance in hell, because I'm not in charge of any of the systems or teams that I'm asking to change, right? And so learning about RevOps, that was the piece I didn't have internally. I could create common language around customer experience and why this was a good idea and making it easier to buy, easier to sell, or easier to, be successful with our business. But I was not creating any like data structure common language or process management common language on the customer side. Now, mind you, this is in companies that are ISO certified, like ISO 9001. They've got some really complex diagrams to cover their
Yeah.
production needs. It's not that they're can't understand complexity. It's just they never really had to because the product was so good, the niche was just perfect. They're overwhelmed with revenue, uh, and that's where I got good at. They stopped asking me for leads, but they didn't know what else to ask me for, right? Because that was always marketing's job, right? And that's where you go to. Well, marketing's usually the ones that are digitally savvy, and now we need to take care of these systems, but all these other teams are using these systems. So it just, so Rev-Ops, learning about that, going to the HubSpot boot camp, Rev-Ops boot camp early this year, really flipped a switch for me and saying
Nice.
this was the piece, and now it's all about, especially with a system like HubSpot, it's like if you can't get leadership to understand what a platform like that can do for the business, and it's just the quick win tool, it's the emailing tool, it's the one shot tool, it's never going to have the resources it needs, it never gets the attention that it needs, and you're going to waste a lot of money and a lot of time, and you're going to piss people off. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this stuff. You got a lot of smart people all over the place that they know what works, right? We
So,
just don't
so
connect the dots.
what's different in your mind about the Rev-Ops concept, and how do you sell this concept to a manufacturer or any business who, but I know what you mean about manufacturers. They are really drilled into usually product operations, the whole product side of the business. Maybe they're drilled into sales, but all the rest of it is just kind of like, oh, this is just like the carpet that we set up our table and build our business on. How do you bring, because RevOps is a relatively new kind of concept, okay? And even though older concepts are kind of new to manufacturing, so how do you bring that concept to somebody like a manufacturer and then actually get buy-in on the whole concept?
Right. Um, it's challenging, but I found some ways to usually if I can get them to sit down for 15 minutes and walk them through a pretty complex diagram related to, buying journeys and customer journeys and how the system, because you hear usually the point solution stuff is we know there's a CRM, maybe we know there's deals or opportunities and we have stages and but there's no connecting the dots to the greater, you know, picture. So that's usually successful because again, and that's where I fight against the idea of keep it simple, because these leaders have some of the most complex diagrams you've ever seen. They've often been forced, they didn't get out of college to learn how to run QuickBooks or ERPs, but they're forced to do it because that's the financial lifeline of the business, and they
Right.
do it because they have to. So until you can, and since we're usually in a tools based conversation at this point, until HubSpot achieves that level of importance, it always gets delegated down to people who don't have the authority, right?
Right.
So because ERPs like to say they have CRMs,
Right.
I've done a lot of thinking about how to separate, that version of a CRM, because it confuses the hell out of people. But what
Right.
actually HubSpot does, and there's two things that I talk about, and that's if you can see it as the customer communication management platform, ERPs aren't going to touch that, and that's where it's tracking everything. It's got all the emails in there. Like, how many times have you seen an ERP where they're like just manually attaching emails or they're copy and pasting? It's awful, right? I feel so bad for some of these teams and the tools they have to work with, and that's where all this stuff is coming from for me. Like, if I'm seeing teams just work in dysfunction every day because they don't have the tools they need, the customers have expectations, they bust their asses to call and email and meet those expectations, right?
Hmm.
And it just should be so much easier for them, and it could be. And uh, I remember a leader of an IT team once told me, love it or hate it, this is our ERP. And it's like, if everybody hates it, that needs to matter, right?
Right.
Because everybody hates it. And so the customer communication management platform, really communication management platform, I think people get kind of wrapped around the customer, word sometimes, like, oh, we can only have these people. But if I've got purchasing talking to the supply chain over here and we find out the lead time just doubled, if I'm a salesperson, I want to see that and I want to know about that. So why in the hell wouldn't we have that email in the place where we manage our customers and customer processes, right?
Right.
So that usually resonates and can differentiate between like what that role is serving. And then if we're also building our website in HubSpot, now it's the customer experience management like
Right.
platform, because we can just have the best kind of control and we can manage it if we choose to. And that's where it's like, you've heard, when I understand why they recoil from terms like customer experience and digital transformation, because it is boiling the ocean. It gets easier to, like, so my point is, instead of trying to avoid boiling the ocean, like, are there some tools available that will let us boil the ocean? And that's where HubSpot, you start to put your data. It's usually a conversation of, okay, you're doing it in this spreadsheet or Word doc right now. I'm just going to do it. We're just going to do it over here instead. And it looks exactly like your Word or spreadsheet. Now, since it's in here, everybody else on the team can see it. The customers can see it if we want them to. In all these spaces where balls get dropped because of communication. And I've learned every week, right now, I'm learning something. I'm spending time at a client site, earlier this week, and I'm asking them how process happens, right? And or there was a change that they needed me to do something differently, and I ask, okay, how do you do that? And it's one sentence verbal, like, oh, you go here. And so, like, I didn't let them out of the conversation at that point. I'm like, no, like, come over. I'm on my laptop. Like, is this what you mean? And I show them the site and where they said to do that. Like, everything is so verbal, right?
Right.
Which is easy to do, because if you're in the office every day, that's where the communication actually happens. And then we build these systems based on that. So of course we can't scale it outside of the walls of the business. These systems don't work for us because they're not built for that, right? So just learning a lot in terms of, being able to serve that and understand the problems and understand that none of these SaaS tools are going to work if you don't handle your processes, if you don't understand what the business goals are, and if it doesn't connect to that, right? Meanwhile, the SaaS companies, the development rate of speed, like especially HubSpot, but I know also ERPs, like they're trying to catch up with AI, and they're not making it any easier, right? Because, like, I'd say even HubSpot does not own the narrative of what HubSpot is right now, right? And that's a huge challenge. They did a great job of owning, marketing automation. It was the marketing tool, right? It was number one. They owned blog, they owned SEO, they just owned it, right? There was no question. Now we still have that understanding, but they flipped on the let's compete with Salesforce switch a few years ago and didn't change anything else. And now it's a full
Right.
platform. And even if you buy it as an email solution, you're getting bombarded with product updates, and it's hard not to know about the other stuff you can do. But when you didn't build it out for that, like, it gets very frustrating for people, right?
Right.
So that's my, like, Kyle Jepson is somebody who's on LinkedIn every day, he posts videos every day, and I kind of watched that. And I said, look, this is the only way. The only way to solve this education gap is by educating every day, like finding a way to do that. And that was always my message, when I joined these bigger organizations, subject matter expertise, right? Like, most of the time the goal is, like, marketing can't do it on your behalf anymore. Like, you're the guy that sells the product. They love you. You say you got a close rate. You get everybody that comes in the door. Well, we got to bring that out out here, right? Can't
Right.
put you everywhere, but we know it works. I thought
Yeah.
subject matter expertise was going to be the limiting factor in creating content, right? It wasn't, right? It's all about the process and getting that expertise into the content in a way that's meaningful and authentic. And the preparation that goes behind the non-live shows is what prevents this stuff. Like it creates the knowledge silos because we literally don't have time to share the knowledge,
Right.
right?
This is a great time to segue into a convo about conveying your messages. Let's Build Daily series of podcasts, which you know, I'm it. I feel like it's grown in scope over time. But why don't you talk about? I mean, it's clearly that education about things in general actually is just kind of like one of your passion points. You want to get information out there. You're doing these live streams. I mean, you've always kind of been, as long as I've known you, with, you've been out there trying to raise awareness and educate, and then you're doing this Let's Build series. Why don't you talk about that series and what you're trying to do there and how that's going and where you see that evolving?
Yeah, no, it's been a blast. Huge learning experience. On March 18th, I just made the decision to say, hey, I'm gonna stop complaining about this education problem and not doing anything about it. And I'm just gonna start hitting the play, like hitting go live every day. You know, I've been a big advocate of LinkedIn for a long time, but could not get myself to be consistent. Sit down every morning. I want it to take 15 minutes to write a post. It actually takes an hour, right? I could not find the cadence, right?
Yeah,
But I
it's hard.
know I was comfortable with just getting on camera and, sharing knowledge in a passionate way, which happens to create good content. So I just started, I decided that cadence, like Kyle's already proved it out. If like the only way we're going to catch up is by doing this every day. And deciding that cadence was the first part. And that teaches you how to build the process, like to support that. And as I moved through that, I started inviting other people to be on. And one of the greatest things was like we would end a show. It still happens, and they're surprised, like they're refreshed, right? Because almost no prep goes into any of these shows, which is already I just blew everybody's minds when saying that. But when we compare this stuff to the usual, like webinars and just like, I saw somebody earlier this year from the IML community, like we spent 4 to 6 months planning this webinar. And like in this day and age, first of all, so much can change in that time. But when you're also trying to be technological about it and provide these digital experiences, and then you build up, and then you have tech prop, it just puts so much effort and pressure on all these things that are out of your control, right?
Right.
You're setting yourself up for disappointment. And people get refreshed, and they're at the end of the show and they're like, man, that was some good content. Like we had a really great conversation. And it's like, even when they say they want to prep and then don't get to it, it's like, yeah, you're 5, 10, 15 years. That's the prep,
Exactly.
right?
People have all this stuff. They have a wealth of stuff just floating on the surface, even that's valuable.
Yeah. And that's been just over and over that happens. So now it's about pushing others, supporting others. Like, so I, created a little group of individual consultants. And I said, hey, who's willing, if all you had to do was show up once a week, like who's willing to do that live, like on LinkedIn? And we got, like 5 to 10 people. And that's where I'm figuring out ways to kind of hand it off. And now it's going to be their show. So I don't have to be on every show. I think that's right around the corner. Um,
That's
but
cool.
just like being able to show up every day and talk through the changes that are happening every day, because there's almost always something to talk about, right? And today was a good
Well,
example.
HubSpot lately has been off the hook, I feel like, with their, like for the last year or so or something, maybe 2 years, it's been like crazy train.
Yeah, it was 800 updates in 2023, and they're beating that pace in
Yeah.
2024. And when you include things like AI as a mechanism, it just causes like, the diehard HubSpotters get excited. But for 98% of the user base, they don't know what's going on, right? And that's where, as consultants and coaches, one of the most valuable things I can do is say, yeah, these 100 updates happen. You care about these two. Like, don't worry
Right.
about the other ones, right? And, but that, you know, being able to scale that and build that understanding, like the usual go-to places of knowledge base and community.hubspot.com, they still get a ton of traffic because the whole Google habit in motion. But that doesn't keep up with the platform either. So, finding these ways, kind of coordinating efforts that are already happening, right, and bringing them together in a new way. Because the other thing, and I think that's why it's so hard to solve this training problem, like you worry about quality and you create this certification process and it's got to go through all these approvals, and you end up with a really robust, this can be like on the quality management side of things or the customer, anywhere in a business, right? It works on the production side because it's not humans. It's usually like, uh, physics based or natural law based, just apply math. It's ones and zeros. Like, you can get very predictable with that. With humans, if I'm out in the field or I'm in HubSpot, very rarely is it 1, 2, 3, 4 done, right? And that's all the content that's out there. It's tutorials, it's or like really bland product updates that don't tell you how to use it.
Right.
And that's where learning a lot from the admin's hug that Kyle does. Like, you know, you just going live like this gives yourself permission to be a little bit messier. It's unplanned because since it's unplanned, it creates a plan for the unplanned events, right? Because when stuff is changing every day in HubSpot and the host of this, that's supposed to be an expert gets surprised by the
Right.
view being different in HubSpot, like now, because it wasn't some planned webinar and everybody's got to attend live, like it's okay, right? Also, the time that it takes to build tutorials and create like this on-demand stuff, and you take a month to do it, and then you go to publish it and the view looks different, right? So people are actually scaling back the content they're doing like that.
Right.
So it's just like kind of meet the market where they are. Like, HubSpot's not slowing down. Let's accept that. How do we get knowledge out? And that's, in these unplanned conversations, the key when I ask people to be on the show is, what are you passionate about? Right? Fill in the blank. Let's build blank with so and so. Fill in the blank with a topic you're passionate about. Right? That's all I need, because then we can create a great conversation. Right? We can move through. Maybe we're looking at HubSpot, maybe we're not. Right? But that's the thing that is going to create good content. And there's a lot of passionate people with a lot of knowledge. And at the end of the day, for me, a win, like success, looks like helping one person like learn something, right? If I know that happened, then there's likely 10, 100 other people, right, that are
Right.
also learning, right? And so
Are
for
you
me,
building like a searchable repository of all this stuff?
yeah,
You got to
there's a link.
suck all this off of LinkedIn and put it somewhere people can find it, right?
Yeah, and that's where like turning it into Let's Build Media, starting to scale it. We've got a Let's Build Media page on LinkedIn, and just got all the videos up on a YouTube channel. So starting to be
Good.
better about that distribution is important, and I'll definitely
It
share
is.
those
Yeah,
links with
yeah.
you.
If anybody's looking to get a hold of you and find out more about all the stuff you're working on, where would you direct them?
LinkedIn,
Find
LinkedIn,
you on LinkedIn. Search for Chris
yes,
Carolan with the little gears.
yeah. Start there.
You know,
Uh,
it's got those gears. Cool, Chris. I really appreciate you being on. We always have good combos, and this was a great combo. And it's cool that you're passionate about education. I feel like I learned things about you that I hadn't realized, but that hearing you talk, it all kind of makes sense. And I appreciate you coming on. and sharing your passion with us. And I'm sure other people will be out there looking at what you're doing, because HubSpot is like a runaway train at this point. You know, you don't even know what you don't know on HubSpot
Yes.
anymore. But
Can we just like, it's okay, and it's okay. Like, just be aware that it's not the same HubSpot. That
yeah,
if you haven't seen it in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, it can do a lot. It can do a lot for your business, and it can do it better than most other systems out there. So that's why I'm so excited about it. It's not, I'm not even a great partner. I don't like selling or servicing it. I'm not like driven by revenue like I should be. I just know, like, because of all this experience that I shared, that this is the best platform, like, to do customer focused processes on. Like, it's not close, right?
yeah, I agree. I agree. Do a lot of work with Salesforce, with HubSpot, with Dynamics, and I definitely prefer HubSpot. My own platform is HubSpot. So yeah, I
Yeah.
understand, and I feel like they just continue to improve it. But
Yep.
anyways, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today, and it's good to see you. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Good to see you too, man. Thanks so much.
All right.